Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mental Attire, the Meaning series. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing choosing obedience over convenience. My name's Caitlin.
Cleopatra.
My there.
I am Amy.
Okay, so kicking this off, I feel like defining things are always like a good way to kick off maybe our topic. So like defining maybe obedience and convenience. When you think of convenience, what do you think? And when you think of obedience, what does your mind go to?
Well, I was trying to think of this before we were recording, and sometimes you think of things and then sometimes you're just going off of what comes to you while you're recording. But in my opinion, choosing obedience over convenience means that you're choosing to obey God wherever He leads you, whatever He's asking you to do. And that means that it might not be the most convenient thing in that moment. It might take you outside of your comfort zone. It might require some level of sacrifice, so that He can bring something even better into your life. And we've kind of talked about, in previous episodes, I can't remember exactly which ones or what one, but we've talked about how it could be distractions, which is our video under the Unplugged series, but it's also just like things that might not be actually, like, they might not be bad by definition, right? But He might ask you to remove something out of your life because it's distracting you from following His purpose for your life. It's distracting you from being present with your family, whatever it might be. He might ask you to remove those things, and those would be conveniences because it's easy to reach for them, or it's a habit that you've built even. So it might not even be like you're consciously doing it, but in my opinion, choosing obedience is like, okay, what are you wanting me to do right now? And then what do I have to do in order to really obey that obedience? That doesn't really make sense, but I couldn't think of a better word. But to actually be true in that obedience versus just reaching for something that's convenient or doing something that's convenient because it's easier, because it's more familiar, whatever it is. And so I kind of think that it just involves listening, which is what we say a lot, but then being willing to do something that like you might not understand how it's going to work out or whatever in the beginning, and being willing to do that.
I would say, oh yeah. Oh, you were talking about conveniences. And I think we have to be able to look at this of there's some short term that we have to temporarily not do. And you mentioned habits. And then there's long term that are not, we may not do them for for a longer period of time. Or there's going to be permanent ones that it's just a no. It's a vice, or it's just not best for us and everyone. And being able to obey that, there's actually many rewards and benefits that are beautiful when we're willing to obey. And we've, like, for an example, we've had this summer some conveniences, some things that we love to do, but temporarily we are holding off. Does a person want to? No. But they can also maybe be more distractions from what God's wanting us to do. Or they, I don't think any of these are permanent. I think they're just temporary. But we've got to look at that.
Well, I think really quick before I let you guys talk, I think that it also makes you appreciate the really meaningful, so it's not really in the sense of some of the things like you're talking about, it's not necessarily conveniences, but it could be a distraction in that moment. And so then when you don't have it temporarily, you realize how meaningful it is to you. And then you also realize, well, if I'm doing these other things and being more present and being more faithful, then those things are going to mean more when they're back in my life. And that goes for healthy things. I don't want to, say, oh, well, you can just give up this vice, and then when it comes back to you, like it's gonna be better and more meaningful. That's not what I'm talking about. But things that are actually good and meaningful and God wants for you, but temporarily might, I don't want to say take away, but might temporarily, you might be without. That's what I was talking about, sacrificing something in this moment for something better, and then, you kind of have those things again in your life.
He's saying, do this now so you can have more of this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think convenience, a lot of times it offers like convenience is comfort a lot of times. And so obedience requires that sacrifice, it requires faith, it requires patience. And sometimes, a lot of times, the two are at odds. One feeds the flesh and one honors God. Most of the times. But like I think of examples like you think about Noah and the ark. Obedience wasn't convenient, but it did save his family. And then I think about Daniel too, refusing to bow down to idols, and the obedience. He chose that obedience over the convenience, even at a great cost. Those are just two really good biblical examples that I think we can apply to this topic.
Playing off what you said, Cleo, as far as like ditching the instant gratification, like long-term satisfaction. Well, not necessarily satisfaction, but just like in the moment, you like it's gonna be less comfortable. It's gonna be a bit more trying, and it kind of depends where it is. But just knowing that you're setting aside these conveniences, like also like velvet ruts, another way to put it, for the long-term lasting fulfillment, I guess. And also, what was I gonna say? Like devotion is another way you can put it. Like obedience, devotion could go hand in hand, because like I think of like in the Forge,
Yes.
What's his name? The president. I forget his name.
I
But
his name.
he was saying how he sacrificed golf because he was playing like 3 times a week because he was so devoted to it, and that was taken away from his time with God. And so now he only plays like once a month or 3 times a year or something in the movie, of course. And then also Isaiah, the main character, he decides to throw out the video games because it was taking up too much space in his life, and not leaving room for the obedience to listen to God and spend more time in the Word and devotion towards Him.
Mm-hmm.
We would encourage you to go watch that movie multiple times. It's good reminders, what's important. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be, there's some permanent and there's some not. It really depends what it is.
Well, I think that also, kind of going back to what I was saying, but like you were saying, temporary versus permanent things. Once you're willing to be obedient no matter what, and that doesn't mean that you won't necessarily mess up along the way, because we are human and we all do make choices, but once you make that choice to be obedient, you become more aware of your choices, just any choice. And it could be all good choices, it could be potentially bad, whatever it is, but you become aware of every single choice you make. And so I think that it also, when you're telling God, okay, I'm going to be obedient no matter what, even if I don't understand whatever it is, then He's like, okay, then I think that you can handle this again, and you need to, you will use it in a different way than you used it before. And again, that doesn't go for vices, but for the virtues that maybe we didn't fully appreciate or whatever it is. He's like, well, you're not appreciating this as much as I think that you should, or I think that you could. And so temporarily, I'm going to ask you to give this up. And then when you are more obedient, or you're more aware and more appreciative of this, I'm going to give this back to you, because I think that it can be something that is very good for you and very meaningful in your life, and then into the lives of others around you, whether it's your family or friends, whoever it would be. And so I think that that's something that I've learned personally, is like, when it feels like he's asking me to give up something very meaningful to me, I'm like, okay, I don't understand, but like if that's what you want, then I'm not going to fight against it, because it's just you're fighting against God, and it doesn't work. And so, just personally speaking, when you introduce those things back into your life, the virtues, or whatever you would call them, I think that's the best word to keep it in the right context. You have a whole different appreciation for them, and you go into it with more purpose. And then you're also asking God, how, like Caitlin says, how can I steward this better? How can I be more obedient to you, but how can I share more of God through this? Versus before it was maybe, well, what do I want to say through this? What is my meaning behind this? And so I think that's just something that I personally learned that I can share.
Well, I think the me-dom, the me first, the me mentality you just mentioned is key. And on the flip side, even if it's things that we really did appreciate and we were not in any shape or form using or abusing or, none of it, God may still be saying, guess what? I have even more for you, and I want you to take like a sabbatical temporarily from this, and I want you to build all these other things up, and I want you to bring even more people when you do get to do these activities. And I want it to mean even more. It may not even be that, okay, we maybe are appreciating it completely, and that may sound crazy, but God's like, you know what? I need you to do these things, so then you can also bring people with you and do these things again. It can be many shapes or forms.
Mm-hmm.
And that is even, it's even more like, oh, come on. Can't we just work this out, God? Can't I just do this and also do this? And God's like, no.
We often want like the easier way around. Like I find myself, I'd like it to just, why can't I find myself saying, why can't this just be easier? But that obedience has a greater reward. There's a greater reward. It strengthens our faith and it builds our trust in God. And so it's important whenever he tells you to do something, just listen. Just listen, don't fight it. Because as a lot of people in my church say, you'll get that spiritual whipping. So it's important to listen. It's important to obey the first time around, because short-term gain is long-term regret.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of like, the buffalo just runs head first straight through the storm. Like obedience. Now I feel like also obedience, the word has more of a comfort to it too. Like when you surrender yourself to him, like you're protected, you're surrounded by him. But it's also like there will be that short period of like, hey, is it like, what am I doing here? Is this the right path? But when you listen to him and just let him, take the reins, but you have to do your work as well. But I feel like it's just, you have sort of a knowing, like, I'm on the right path.
Mm-hmm. You don't question it as much. You might question along the way, and again, I feel like that's also kind of part of being human, is our mind is constantly like thinking and wondering and stuff, but you don't question. You question in a different way, because you're asking God continuously, is this the right thing? Is this what you want me to do? What do you want me to be doing right now? So you're not questioning, like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know the best way to describe what I'm meaning.
I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go get a quote that I know of, but I got to run and get it. So just keep it rolling.
Okay. I don't know the best, like I said, I don't know the best word to describe it, but the questioning, you do it in a different way, and it's more of a, kind of like you said, a devoted way. It's in devotion to God versus like the fighting against God, or almost trying to hide your plans from God, because you're like, I don't know if this would be your path for me, but I really want to do this. So you're like constantly questioning yourself, but it's not in a comforting, rooted way of questioning yourself. And so, yeah, I would agree with what you said, Isaiah.
Okay, a wise person once wrote, temporary happiness isn't worth long-term pain. So that leads into our lovely little vices. You know, temporary happiness isn't worth long-term pain. And, you know, you were talking about, Caitlin, you know, there's many more rewards for obeying God. It's maybe not always easy, but in the long run, in my experience, it's always easier to do God's way, and it's harder when we do our own way, because it's the low way. We have, like we talk about, it's the highway channel, you know. We choose either the highway, the school of wisdom, or we choose the low way, the school of hard knocks. And, you know, it's like, okay, do I want long-term pain, or and short-term happiness, or do I really just want to do it God's way? And I, like Cleopatra said, we're human. We make choices, we make mistakes. We have a video, Is Free Will a Responsibility? Episode, I think 15, isn't it? And, you know, I invite you to watch that. And we have also Apparel of Obey, a couple different ones that are great reminders, you know. And we've mentioned before, we could probably even create a little tiny card deck that they could print out and, you know, keep one in your bag, or put one in your car, or put one in your bathroom, or on your fridge, or places for the family to see, and that kind of stuff as reminders. We could probably put a couple of the verses, create those, and, you know.
Yeah, that would be really good. And just like you said, I think sometimes, I don't know, it is almost, it's easier to go ahead and just choose, and I go back to that, just choose that obedience the first time around, because otherwise we're going to be fighting God, we're going to be fighting ourselves, and we're going to be miserable. So it's just really important. And we need those reminders in scripture. We need those reminders, just whether you're hanging on your mirror or in your car, whatever. We need those reminders to choose that obedience. And it brings like a comfort knowing that you're doing what's right.
Be that first kernel of popcorn we always talk about. Maybe not everybody's doing it, but guess what? It can be a great, contagious, infectious way to pass on the good. So let's get a little squirmier. What's one area that you tend to choose convenience over obedience? I'll admit it. Again, if you watch our video, it would be under Unplugged that we just made yesterday. What's the name of it? Well,
Literally edited that. I should know this.
so I was talking about, you know, I once again last night chose convenience. We had a task that we need to get this apparel order, and I realized this morning that I went down the rabbit hole again. And darn it, I could have been sitting there working on that instead of watching something, and I realized which one would have made me feel better. And so, you know, I just said in that video that we recorded yesterday, what'd you say the name of it was?
Distractions versus priorities.
Distractions versus priorities. And I let distractions get the best of me, and I did not do the priority, and I could have woken up this morning feeling a lot better about it. So what's one that you all, you know, just pick one, just to help people know that we're real. I mean, we go through this every day.
I get distracted during writing. And like, you can get those notifications, and I'm really bad about, like, if I don't have my little hourglass timer with me, I'll set a timer on my phone. Okay, well, that phone's sitting there, and if you see it light up or whatever, so I need to learn, like, just either have my hourglass with me, or just take the time and just put the phone away, and whatever time it is, it is.
Do the digital well-being. what's it
Yeah, I
called
need to
on
set that up.
Apple? I
You can
turn it
do.
on to like you can have work, you can have quiet time, you can have if you're whatever you're doing, you can pick only what apps you can use during that time, at
Yeah,
least
I
on
need
the
to do
Android.
that.
And that's what I do because then I don't have access and it just teaches you, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I'm trying to think of something that like hmm. I don't know why I'm struggling so much. Uh do you have anything while I'm trying?
Mark on. I mean, as far as like, I mean, I feel like there's multiple things that I could say in relation to listening to God, like what I'm supposed to be doing, and I just kind of, push it to the side, like, I'm gonna go do this instead. But also more of like obedience to, I would say, my parents. You know, that throughout, my life, there's been times where, I want to do something, or go down one path, and my parents are like, yeah, yeah, you sure about that? And they try to guide me in the other direction, the godly direction. And of course, when you listen to the world and society and peers, they're all telling you to go the opposite direction. But having the obedience, which is not easy, I will say, it's not easy when you have, especially the distractions and the noise of the world around you and close to you, especially in your friends or even just family members. Um, you have to get quiet and understand where your parents are coming from. They're coming from love. They're coming from experience, knowledge, wisdom. So I would say that's been, I mean, how long there's been different things, but now I'm finally, I think, at that point where I can obey my parents better. Um, so there's one thing.
I think for me, I guess what came to me is like allowing and kind of playing off of what Caitlin said about getting distracted while writing, but allowing my focus to not like there's different things that I want to do or work on in it, and it's really that most of them like are actually a good thing. But like I'll let my focus be scattered, so like when I'm working on one thing, I'm thinking about another thing or whatever it is, and so it's kind of like almost like not prioritizing your time well, but then also not like giving the respect to whatever you're working on in that moment. And I think that's kind of a continual thing. So I don't necessarily know that it's something that I'll ever have perfected, but I think it's something that you can improve and have a better, like, I don't want to say understanding, but a better, like commitment to it maybe. So like I think it is something that can be improved to the point where you're not like so either distracted or just like I don't know. I think distracted is the best word. And so for me, it's like, well, I'm working on these designs for Mindset Merch, but I'm also thinking about my book over here. But while I'm doing each of those tasks, while I'm writing, I should be focused on writing. Like that should be my focus. If it's for 30 minutes, whatever it is, and then while I'm making those designs, I should be fully enjoying making those designs. Or if we're making, it can be for not work related things too. If we're making supper, that's what my focus. And so I think it's kind of, and of course our thoughts are gonna go. You're gonna think about what you're gonna do next or whatever. I'm not saying that's all bad, but if you're not fully in the present, then it's a distraction. It's kind of convenient because you're not having to
Focus.
focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that would probably be, I mean, I guess the best example that I could come up with in the moment.
Well, and
Um,
You just
Isaiah
spoke to what I
yesterday in
feel a
our,
lot. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I just said she just spoke to how I feel a lot. So yeah, she put into words what I
Well,
can't put into words. So
yesterday in our Unplug, the connection series with the distractions versus priorities, Isaiah, you had mentioned a statistic of what the attention span is, correct? Because in Unplug, we're talking about swap the tech to connect, but it's also just swap conveniences or swap vices or, swap unhealthy habits, whatever it may be to connect. But I think, wasn't it just
It's
minuscule?
really 8 seconds, from 8 to like 8 to 47 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, but like 8 seconds. So, we have become where we actually do have control over our mind and our thoughts. It's a habit. We have to learn there's 5% conscious, 95% is subconscious, unconscious. So 95% of us is our habits and our behaviors that we've learned, coping mechanisms, survival techniques, programmed, conditioned. So 95% of us is on autopilot. Well, we've mentioned we can pay attention, we can become aware. So we have to change the habits.
I think it's also, and again, this is something that we've kind of touched on before in one of our videos or multiple of our videos, but it's like, I think part of the reason that you're, or at least for me, I'm not going to speak to anyone else, but that you're thinking about something else while working on a task is because our minds have been programmed that we have to be doing the next thing. And I don't want to say that in the way of like, well, you can just kind of slough off and be lazy. I'm not saying that that's okay, but also like we've talked about, you feel guilty for taking 10 minutes to go for a walk, or you feel guilty for taking 20 minutes to play a game or something. So like we become so, it's funny because it's so productivity focused, but it's actually that you're not necessarily being productive, but it's like you have to be doing something that's like productive or whatever it is, that like our mind is constantly thinking of what that next thing is going to be. And so we don't focus fully on our task in the moment. And I think that again, the core of that is good because we should be, actively seeking the next right thing and moving forward. But it has a negative downside too, to where we're so focused on that we're unfocused in the present moment. And so that's something that I feel like I'm definitely working on.
Something I do is I either use Post-it notes or a piece of paper, or I use OneNote, and I have lots of folders and notebooks and sub notebooks and all of that kind of stuff. I think Patra's agreeing that I have all of that. No, really though, if you're cooking or you're writing or you're working on mindset merch, or you're working on your own task, whatever they may be, if something comes to you, write it down or put it in whatever, there's lots of different ones out there, Evernote, yada, yada, yada. But keep them organized, have whatever, go in, and then you move on and you don't carry it with you. You're not going to keep going. And so it's like free, because you don't necessarily want to forget it, but you don't want to keep focusing on it right now. So it's like the best of all. So use that, utilize it. I use Post-it notes like crazy. I'm surprised Cleopatra and I aren't. And I also use OneNote.
I got distracted because there's our neighborhood pheasant just walking on the driveway out here. So
we have two of them. One's plump, one's skinny.
That's funny.
They have about 5,000 lives.
Yeah.
So, there's habits that we can do to change this for the better. So it would just be we have excuses versus execution or something like that. And is it under mental attire movement? A video you can watch. It's just plumb flat an excuse if we say we don't want to change.
Well,
So
it's kind of like when.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it's kind of like when you say you don't have the time, and then you start to take inventory of your time, and you're like, well, if I stopped doing this, I would have the time, but that's a convenience instead of obeying. Okay, maybe I should take the time for this instead of this because it would be more meaningful. And so I think that's kind of that ties in with what you were saying.
And check out our video, the distractions versus priorities, because we talk about it takes 17 up to 50 or more minutes. Once we're distracted, we're off course for a good 30, 60 minutes. It's a lot of time in one day. Okay, a takeaway.
Always the hardest part of the video.
But it's one really good one so that everybody can say, hey, I'm going to try this out and I'm going to practice it, apply and live it.
I think just even like practical everyday choices. So like, am I hitting snooze instead of choosing prayer? Am I holding a grudge instead of choosing forgiveness? Am I choosing to serve or just sit on I don't want to say being lazy, but am I going to serve or am I going to just maybe not use the talents that God has given me to use? And I think you can reflect and what area of your life are you choosing convenience instead of obedience? Choosing obedience is always choosing God's best for your life. So it's important to remember that when you do choose to obey, you're choosing God's best.
I think that my takeaway would be that, like Caitlin was saying, choosing obedience is God's best. And so, for me personally, when you start to really want God's best for you, and then also for the people around you, because it trickles to the people around you, but mostly for yourself to begin with, then you become aware of where you're not seeking God's best for you. And then you start to really only want that. And again, that doesn't mean that mistakes aren't made or whatever, but I think that I just would invite you to, like, if you're hesitant about it because you've never done that before or you don't know how, like we've talked about in previous videos, it's not that you have to pray a certain way, it's not that you have to go about it a certain way, but you have to be like, God, I'm willing to do what you're going to ask me to do, and then you have to listen, and then you have to do what he's asking you to do. And so I would just invite you to, like, if it's unfamiliar to you, instead of saying, well, I don't know how to do this, take a moment, take 2 minutes, like we've talked about in our previous videos, just to listen and to ask God, what do you want me to do? And then be willing to do it. But I think it's just a matter of, like, for me, my takeaway is that once you start doing it, it not only becomes easier, but it becomes more fulfilling than how you were doing it before.
I mean, both those were really good. So, but like we said in yesterday's video, Cleo, I think you said make a list of distractions. Well, I would say make a list of 2 things. Well, it could be on the same page, but 2 different things. What are you being obedient to? Because you do have to at least acknowledge the good that you are doing currently, but also what conveniences or velvet ruts are you also, being loyal to. So I think putting those 2 next to each other and saying, okay, well, I'm going to start on, these 3 bigger ones that honestly could be daily. I have my routine, but it's not, the best routine. I think just making a list and comparing those and day by day, try and work through those and choose obedience over convenience. Also, I wanted to mention, like Moses, he felt inadequate when God was asking him to do certain actions. I feel like that's also something that a lot of us feel when God is trying to ask us to do something, like, you really think I can do that? So I just say being open to it, saying, knowing your worth, and if God asks you to do it, he clearly believes you have what it takes.
Excellent takeaways. And I would say be that first kernel of popcorn, be the light, be an example, be the influence. Invite you to do quiet time. We have a video under our mental attire movement that, and work on that habit. You can go and watch the idea of it or what it's about. And then you've all said, then you've got to act on it. It's sometimes it requires us to repent. We got to change our thoughts. We got to change our beliefs. We have to change our ways so it's the highway. And I would also encourage you to use either paper. We love paper and pen or pencil. And then use Post-it notes, use whatever you can find, or use an app on your phone. Very simple, just to, you got an idea that comes to you, whether you implement it or not, just write it down. Do a brain dump. That's what it's called, is a brain dump or a mind dump. Do it. You'll be freer. So, well, thank you all. We appreciate you. We are thankful for you. No one or family shall do life alone. So do reach out, connect with us, and we will connect with you. And we look forward to seeing you real soon. Take care.